access to their bank accounts, it's also not the case. So thank you for putting together an event where you are, placing these topics at the forefront. And something that came through for me when I really dropped into the topic in the beginning was that wherever there is the feeling or the conditioning of shame with regards to women, therein lies their power. And so many of us have experienced shame with regards to our sexuality, whether that is that we've been overtly sexual, or whether it is that we are not performing enough. And likewise, there is shame associated with our menstruation and our blood. So this is a little clue into how we've been conditioned to strip away our power. And after our talk today, I hope that you feel deeply connected to your seat of power, which is in your womb space, and able to pierce through these layers of conditioning that we receive. So I'm on my day 2 of my cycle today, and I saw everyone else doing their talks before this, and they had beautiful presentations and had planned it down to the T, and I was like, okay, what's she gonna come through with, channel through? And usually I wouldn't be speaking in a public event or doing something new in this point in my cycle, but it was very clear that that was a message from the goddess who I work with intimately, that this is what wanted to come through. And this morning I received a text message from my assistant. So everything in my life is centered around my cycle. I'll get into the womb healing story, but my business is completely centered around my cycle. I protect everything so that I don't need to do anything for at least 5 days during the month. And my assistant knows this because I've trained him, and he's a man and he's wonderful. And I sent him a message this morning saying, it's moon time. And he sends me a message and says, thank you so much. This is the reason why we're all here. And it just brought so much tears to my eyes to feel that this can be a reality, that we can live in a world where men are so reverent and so willing and so excited about providing and protecting us during our moon time. Not just at that point, but you get the drift. So it hasn't always been like that though. So what I'd love to share with you today is a story about me being 22 years old and being in the gynecologist's office, and after months and months of tests, having not had a bleed for 2 years, being told that they don't know what it is, but there's pretty much no chance of me having children. Has anyone else been in a similar position like that in a gynecologist's office or a medical system? Yeah. And so what it gave to me in that moment was a deep fire in my belly to like, okay, well, watch me. And, I have quite a rebellious spirit by nature, and so I think it served me well in this instance. And at first I tried to regain my cycle through very masculine ways, or apply this method, do this ice bath, this breath, this cleanse, this XYZ, and it was just getting so much, and I was doing 2 hours of practice of yoga every day, and still there was no cycle. And so I had to go a little bit deeper into myself to figure out, okay, what's going on here? And it turns out that what I actually needed to do was to get comfortable in the void, to be comfortable in the silence, and to make a process of a descent away from the mind and the doing, deep, deep, deep down into the feeling and the being in my womb. And it's not easy, right? It's not easy to do that in a world that tells us to keep busy and to keep going. And when I started to do that, I started to think, okay, I'm onto something. I connected with shamanic womb healing, the womb wheel. I connected with somatic practices. I started to really align myself with the cycles in nature, like the lunar cycle and the earth seasons, and even the breath, right, has a cycle to itself. And although I wasn't bleeding, I could feel, okay, I'm part of this, I belong here, this is me. And then after a certain amount of time, sure enough, my blood came, and it felt so wonderful. It felt like becoming a woman all over again. And after that, I had a completely different relationship with my sensuality, with my sexuality, with what it means to be a woman. And for those of you who are on a fertility journey like I've been on, just know that it is possible for you to find that in your own way. And I'm not saying that my way is the way 100% for you, but it really helped me to have mentors on the way, or women in the field who had recovered it in their own unique way. And then, after I got my bleed back, I started to discover even more. So first of all, it was really painful, and I was processing a lot of ancestral grief from my mother line, and I went deep into that, and it was like, is this ever going to end? And then once I had cleared that, I then started to tap into the manifesting potential, which is what I'm going to share with you today. Because your womb and your cycle, you have the ability to literally birth anything you desire. Whether it's a baby, a business, yourself over again, another day, another month, like a new location. I wouldn't be living here in Tulum if it wasn't for this work. And I wouldn't have built my business that keeps expanding if it wasn't for this work. So I'm so excited to share with you the medicine of that. So first of all, when I regained my cycle, it started by just being like bleeding and not bleeding. Does anyone relate to that? There's like 2 stages. It's like, okay, I'm bleeding and then I'm not. And then as you go deeper, there's more. So it's like, okay, after I bleed, there's a sense of freshness, this newness of inner spring, this rising up, this potential energy. And then there's this peak climax of your ovulation, where your sensual sexual energy is really juicy and you're able to be in full expansion. And then afterwards, you feel a breath out, right? As you descend into the luteal, and maybe you feel release, or maybe you feel agitation, like the sense of, like a snake needs the friction, right? To get its skin off. It doesn't just glide off, it needs the friction. So we feel this sense of irritability in our luteal phase in the week before our cycle, because we are being called to release. We're being called to let go. And then if we respect our moon time and we can rest, then we can start all over again. So let's go a little bit deeper into that, because the main thing that if you want to implement this, if you really want to go deep into womb work and the blood mysteries, that I recommend is that you rest during your menstruation. Whether that's even for an hour, you take your red tent, you take your moon cave, and you go within and you connect with the oracle within you, and you release what you need to release. And then in your day 3, I love how Ishel, goddess of fertility, by the way, is floating around blessing us. And then in your day 3, it's about calling in a vision. And you can do that in your own meditative practices, or when I work with women, I also guide them in shamanic womb drum journeys, where we go and meet with your inner goddess and really tune into what do you want to create this next month. And that could be in different areas of your life. So your life, your love life, your business, if you have one, or your leadership. And then you have this insight, right? You've gone in to connect with yourself. You're not outsourcing, you're not asking someone else what they think. You've gone deep inside your own womb space to say, okay, this is what we're going to do next. And then you start to rise up into your inner spring, you know? Estrogen is rising, just like sap in the trees in spring. I'm from Europe, and so right now, energetically, I can really feel how spring is coming in the yearly cycle. And so we're offered this opportunity for a week every month as women. We can truly use this rising energy to move towards our intention. And that also involves a little bit of your inner masculine, because you're actioning, you're moving towards a goal. And then your third week, which is the pinnacle, if you like, the orgasmic energy of the cycle, where your Shakti, your Kundalini energy is really expanded, is your ovulation. So if you are resting during your menstruation enough, if you're honoring that moment of pause, the deeper you cocoon, the brighter you bloom. So if you're not feeling your ovulation so much, it's probably because you're not honoring your moon time so much. If you rest, you might notice that the next time you ovulate, you've got all this energy. You're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with it? And that's why we need the intention. So you come back, okay, yeah, I'm channeling it to this intention that I found during my bleed, and we birth it. So if you have a business, it's a beautiful moment to launch something or to do something external that requires a lot of you showing up and being in the limelight. If you are in a relationship, it might be the moment where you really start to introduce those shifts and changes. And in the beginning, there's an element of awareness and consciousness, of course. Like if you ever practiced yoga, right, in the beginning, it's like, oh, my muscles hurt. And after a while, you're flowing and you're making your own practice. It's the same with this. So after a while, you start to naturally feel this happening in your cycle. And you can do a practice that I'll give to you today to take away, which is dedicate your egg during your ovulation to something. Right? We have these eggs in our ovaries, and some of us may not want to have physical children, that's okay, but let's just take a moment to honor like that absolutely amazing fact that we have all of this potential life inside of us. And so anything with magic and ritual is about the intention with it. So if you can make a ritual in your own way and really dedicate your egg to something, just watch and let me know how it goes, because magic is going to happen. Yeah, so we've been in this full bloom of inner summer and ovulation, and following that intention up from your bleed in your inner spring to your full bloom summer. And then let's all take a breath together to feel this. So take a deep breath in, hold, and then yeah, that is the energy of inner autumn. That's a beautiful exhale that we get to experience every single month if we allow ourselves, right? And that's the thing about sexuality, is that if we're not meant to be constantly expanding, we're cyclical beings. And so you might feel sexual, you might feel horny in your inner autumn, I'm not saying that. But just to really connect with your own sexual nature, it's actually rooted in this, in your womb. And so the medicine of this part of your cycle is you get to let go. You get to identify those things in your life that are not working. And for me, I don't know if I have a favorite part of the cycle because I love it all, but I do have like a deep respect for this part, because this is the part where we have had our power stripped away from us historically, you know, like, oh, it's just my hormones, this thing coming up, you know. But how many times when you're feeling that intensity, if we're honest with ourselves, the level of truth, it might not come out the way that we want it to, but there is underneath it a veil of truth where this thing just isn't working, whether that's a relationship, whether it's a job, a location, but we're offered that opportunity to consciously let it go with our blood. Because during our moon time, we're embodying a death, right? And I know that sounds kind of, wow, it's intense, but you know, it's true. And in our culture, we're kind of conditioned to be afraid of death, but we can't know we're alive unless we have been intimate with death in different forms. So whatever's not working for you will show up in your week 3. So my invitation to you is to get really quiet and write down, I'm letting go of this with my blood. And if that means you need to make external changes as well, you might have conversations with people, clearing conversations. You might have to make radical changes. It might take a few cycles to get there as well, and that's okay. But just to be real with yourself, be honest with yourself. And then if you do make those changes, notice how you experience your menstruation differently. Because a lot of the time, when we get to our bleed and we have pain or we have all of these issues, it's a backlog of things that we've not dealt with. Not maybe even just from our lifetime, but from our mothers, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers. Because we were an egg in our great-grandmother's womb, right? So what they experienced, we experienced. The beauty and the not so beautiful. So this work is deep. It's not kind of for everyone, but it's so rewarding. And just like the snake, if you go into this, and I call it the spiritual practice of menstruation, if you go into it, you can transform your life at a very rapid rate. I left my life in the UK 2 years ago. When I started this work, I think it was, I really went into it 2 years before, and I was still living in the UK, working as a psychotherapist in the system, and I just rapidly changed everything. I sold everything, I built my online business, it continued to grow, I moved here, now I run retreats, and I'm doing it in alignment with my cycle. I'm not compromising my energy. In fact, I'm going deeper into my embodiment as a woman. And so this is what I teach at my retreats, and it's an incredibly deep and profound transmission, and it's an absolute honor to witness women unfold in it as well, you know, because I see how this ripples effect, it continues across time and space. In fact, I had a message from a group of women from the last retreat who are now in Costa Rica, and they're all bleeding at the same time, and they came together to meet up again, and they're doing the red tent practice that we did in the retreat together, with sharing their blood, you know, putting their blood here and doing the blood magic and everything, and it's just I love it so much. So I think we're kind of under time, so I would love to open up if anyone has any questions about how to work with your womb, or if anything is arising in your journey, in your fertility journey, or whatever it might be. If you don't feel comfortable to ask me right now, like, I'm going to be around as well, so you can grab me. Does anyone have a question?
You mentioned the best time to start something new.
Yeah.
I didn't hear. Did you say is that during ovulation or the bleed cycle?
Really good question. It's in a spring, so it's the week just after you stop bleeding. That's when you can go. But there's always that tension when you get the insight from your bleed, like, oh, we want to create this, you know. It's holding that tension until you stop bleeding. You can write it down. You can do like lovely things that make you feel like you're moving in that direction in a creative way. But what my recommendation is that you wait till that week after, and then you can go, and you'll have all of that potential energy that's charged up as well. It's deep deconditioning. It's really hard, and I still sometimes find it challenging, you know, like I'm on my day 2, and usually I wouldn't do something like this, but I was like, my inner priestess wants to do this in a way that feels easeful, and wearing red, and I'll jump in the cenote after. So there's ways that you can make it fit around your life. It's not like a binary, you know, cookie cutter thing. Yeah. But it depends on the length of your cycle. Because if you're not 28 days, then it might be a bit shorter as well. But yeah.
If someone has irregular cycles, is it something that this person has to work on until this person has regular cycles, or it's okay to have irregular cycles?
I think that it would depend on the woman and how she feels about that. Because I know some women, for example, who really align with the moon. There'll be like 3 cycles with the full moon, and then it changes, and they just know, they feel in their body that that's their rhythm. If you feel something's off and you're like, you know, I notice when I'm stressed it comes early or late, that's probably a sign that there's some harmonizing to be done with it. Yeah. But it's always coming from your inner knowing. You know, there's been times in my life where it's been super regular, and then I got really identified with bleeding with the full moon, and then as soon as I became identified with it, it shifted. So there is a wisdom to our womb that our mind doesn't quite know yet. So I definitely think having faith and trust and not pathologizing this part of our body, despite the fact that the medical system is constantly trying to tell us to do so, is a really powerful thing. Yeah. Okay, well, if anyone else has a question afterwards, I will be around. And if you feel the call to go deeper, I'm going to be running a retreat at the beautiful Now in the jungle. We have our private cenote temple where we do all of the womb rituals, and that's going to be at the end of April. So if you're curious, come grab me. Thank you so much.
Okay.